The first time I witnessed a human child struck by an officer of X9, I assumed it would amount to nothing more than a standard incident report. Just another forgettable entry in the endless stream of bureaucratic monotony that defined life on Galactic Council Station Omega-7. I could not have been more mistaken. My designation is Krill 448, observer for the Council these past 2 decades. I've logged it all. Wars raging across centuries, peace accords negotiated in 17 incompatible dialects, and trade disputes so intricate they reduced hardened Zelthan merchants to tears. But nothing in my long career, prepared me for the day humanity revealed to the galaxy the true meaning of proportional response. It began, as humans quaintly put it, on a Tuesday. Something about that primitive system of dividing time seemed to lend the entire day an unsettling weight. The station bustled with its usual chaos. Gordhacks shouting over freight lanes, Velthrani diplomats polishing their rehearsed smiles, the constant acidic tang of sulfur wafting from the Rixian delegates' breathing gear. And then she entered, Captain Maya Torres, representative of the human delegation, followed by a figure so unusual for council chambers that all eyes turned, a small human child. The girl could not have been more than 8 cycles old. Wide, expressive eyes, the kind humans evolved that stir something protective in almost every other species, peered curiously around the room. Clutched against her chest was a battered toy, a stuffed animal that looked as if it had survived a dozen minor explosions. "Daddy, why is everyone staring?" she whispered, tugging on Torres' uniform sleeve. Torres dropped to one knee, his face softening in that peculiar, disarming way humans reserve for their young. "Because they've never seen anyone as brave as you, Emma. Remember what we practiced." The child, Emma, straightened her tiny shoulders, eyes set with a seriousness almost absurd in one so small. "Stand tall. Speak truth. Fear nothing." I nearly choked on my nutrient paste. Deathworlders, as if already terrifying, were now teaching their children battle creeds. The day's agenda was meant to be routine. Humanity's petition for expanded trade access through the Kepler sector. Normally such proceedings dragged on for 3 hours before concluding in vague promises to revisit matters half a year later. Nothing remarkable. Officer Vex 9 was overseeing security. He belonged to what we diplomatically called the old school. A zealot for hierarchy and discipline, he made no secret of his disdain for humanity's upstart presence in council affairs. His contempt had already ignited more than one cultural clash. At first, the screening proceeded smoothly, until Emma's toy triggered the contraband scanner. An embedded primitive device in its chest emitted a faint signal. "Remove the object," Vex 9 commanded, his voice as rigid as Dura-steel. Emma froze, hugging the toy closer. "It's just Mr. Buttons. He sings lullabies when I'm scared." "Contraband remains contraband," Vex 9 replied coldly, extending one of his 6 articulated arms. "Surrender it. Human spawn." Emma recoiled instinctively. Torres stepped between them, protective in an instant. "Officer, it's a comfort item for a child. Surely confiscation is unnecessary." Vex 9's eyestalks swiveled to fixate on Torres. The glare alone would have made weaker species collapse. "Do you question Council security protocols, human? I'm requesting reasonable accommodation for a minor under-diplomatic escort." The air thickened, tension sharp enough to cut with a plasma blade. Delegates edged backward, already recognizing the prelude to a diplomatic crisis. My recording unit blinked to life. I knew this was no longer routine documentation. Vex 9 moved suddenly, shoving past Torres to seize the toy directly from Emma's arms. The girl stumbled, startled, still clutching the stuffed creature. In her panic, she fell. And then Vex 9 committed the error that would redefine galactic politics. He struck her. Not a warning brush, not a restrained gesture. A full, brutal backhand across the child's face, forceful enough to send her sprawling. The sound cracked through the chamber like a discharge from a railgun. Silence followed. The kind of silence that makes the hairs along your limbs bristle. Emma lay stunned, a vivid red welt already blossoming across her cheek. For a moment she did not cry, too shocked to process the pain. Then Captain Torres moved. I have viewed countless battle recordings. Krelian berserkers rending enemy ranks apart, Tanger shock troops soaring impossible distances. Yet nothing compared to the cold, precise fury that radiated from a human parent defending their child. Torres did not roar. He did not lash out. He walked calmly to his daughter, kneeling to lift her gently. His voice was soft, tender, almost heartbreakingly human. "Are you hurt, sweetheart?" Emma shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks but lips pressed silent. The composure of that child outstripped many seasoned soldiers. Torres rose, still holding her hand. His gaze locked on Vex 9. The human's voice when he spoke carried such lethal calm that even the translator units seemed to hesitate before transmitting. "Officer, you just struck a child under diplomatic protection." Vex 9's thorax puffed outward, arrogant, oblivious to the catastrophe he had just unleashed. The spawn failed to comply with security protocols. Physical correction was required. Officer Vex 9 delivered the words without hesitation, as if they were beyond question. "Physical correction," Torres repeated slowly, tasting the phrase like poison. "On an 8-year-old child. Species is irrelevant. Age is irrelevant. Compliance is mandatory." I watched Torres' face shift. My instincts, honed across 20 years of surviving volatile encounters, screamed at me to get out. Something irreversible was about to unfold. Torres remained outwardly calm, though the quiet edge in his voice made the chamber colder. "I need to place a call." He activated his comm device. My recording sensors picked up fragments of the transmission. "Admiral Morrison? Torres here. We have a code black on station Omega 7. Officer designation VX 9 assaulted Emma during security screening. Physical strike on a minor under diplomatic protection." There was silence on the other end, followed by a clipped reply. "Understood, Captain. 48 hours. Yes, sir. We'll maintain position and document everything." He ended the call and turned back to Vex 9, who now looked marginally less certain. "Officer, be advised. You've committed violence against a human child under the protection of the United Earth Alliance. This incident has been relayed to Earth Command. You will hear from my superiors soon." Vex 9's mandibles clicked derisively. "Human threats carry no weight here. This is Council jurisdiction." Torres' smile was not one of humor. It was a predator's smile, measured and without warmth. "Threats? No, officer. This is not a threat. This is information. Earth takes a very dim view of anyone who harms our children. What happens now is outside my control." He lifted Emma into his arms. The child tucked her face into his shoulder, clinging silently. Just before he departed, Torres looked back one final time. "Officer Vex 9. I suggest you update your will." The following 48 hours stretched into the longest of my career. I attempted to maintain the pretense of routine, filing reports, attending minor council sessions, forcing normalcy into a situation anything but normal. Yet beneath every interaction hummed an undercurrent of unease. The humans, outwardly courteous and composed, were terrifying in their restraint. Torres remained mostly within the human embassy quarters with Emma. The child recovered quickly, astonishingly resilient. Soon she was once again clutching her stuffed companion, Mr. Buttons, which the delegation had successfully argued to retain, wandering the halls and peppering diplomats with endless questions about alien physiology and customs. But the other humans had changed. Their movements were purposeful, their communication subdued but efficient. Calls were made in hushed voices. Equipment shifted from place to place with the kind of precision that resembled quiet mobilization. Personnel circulated with patterns too deliberate to be coincidence. On the second morning, as I sifted through overnight reports, my comm unit blared with an emergency alert. Unidentified fleet detected at system perimeter. All personnel report to stations. I rushed to the observation deck and nearly forgot to breathe. Shit. Hundreds of them. Human ships. Colossal dreadnoughts capable of rending planetary crust. Sleek destroyers that cut through space like predators circling prey. They position themselves in flawless formation, an arrangement both magnificent and utterly terrifying. At the fleet's heart loomed a legend spoken of only in intelligence whispers, the Retribution. Humanity's most advanced warship. Undefeated in combat. Nicknamed Planet Breaker after the catastrophic Centauri incident. Panic rippled through the station. Commander Thex Prime, a Vortak elder who had endured 3 regime overthrows, summoned an emergency convocation. Every delegate, aide, and official with even the smallest measure of authority crowded into the main chamber. The air pulsed with dread, confusion, and the dawning realization that the galaxy had underestimated humanity. Thex Prime addressed the gathering with a voice tight from concealed fear. The human fleet requests boarding permission. They state they are conducting an official investigation into an incident involving violence against a diplomatic dependent. The chamber erupted with murmurs. Many representatives blinked in surprise. Several had already dismissed the altercation with the human child as inconsequential. Surely this is excessive, Council Member Zephyr 12 protested. One minor altercation cannot possibly justify this level of military escalation. And then Captain Torres entered. Emma still rested in his arms, wide-eyed, gazing about the chamber as though it were an exotic zoo. Council members, Torres announced, his voice carrying unchallenged across the expanse. Allow me to introduce Admiral Sarah Morrison, commander of the Third Fleet, and the officer who will oversee this investigation. The primary viewscreen activated, shifting to reveal the interior of a command deck. The woman who appeared seemed carved from iron, muscular, severe, radiating the aura of someone who could bench press a moon and still be unimpressed. Her voice filled the chamber, the tone of authority that compelled worlds to capitulate without resistance. This is Admiral Sarah Morrison of the United Earth Alliance Third Fleet. 47 hours ago, one of your officers committed an act of violence against a human child under diplomatic protection. This action constitutes an act of war under Earth Alliance military code. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as a preservative. Admiral Morrison continued without hesitation. However, Earth Command acknowledges that this may have been the reckless choice of one individual, not the official stance of this station. Therefore, we are willing to restrict our response to that individual, provided he is surrendered to human jurisdiction within the next 60 minutes. Commander Thex Prime's translator sputtered under the strain of his frantic reply. Admiral, surely this can be addressed through established diplomatic channels. The Council has long-standing procedures for such incidents. Morrison's expression curved into a smile that could populate the nightmares of enemy commanders for generations. Commander, allow me to explain something fundamental about human psychology. We are a species that has endured ice ages, pandemics, cataclysms. We have survived our own violent nature across millennia. Through all of it, we forged a single absolute rule: harm our children, and we will end you. She let the words hang in the chamber, cold and heavy. Your officer struck an 8-year-old girl. A child, frightened and alone in unfamiliar surroundings, clinging to the only object of comfort she possessed. He could have asked. He could have explained. He could have called for a translator. Instead, he chose violence. From Torres' arms, Emma's small voice rose, timid but steady. Admiral Morrison? Mr. Buttons wasn't really contraband. He just plays music when I have bad dreams. For a fleeting instant, Morrison's hard expression softened as she addressed the child. I know, sweetheart. And I will make certain no one ever harms you again. Then her gaze snapped back to the assembly. The atmosphere seemed to drop several degrees. 58 minutes, Commander. Officer Vex, 9 will be remanded to human custody, or we will retrieve him ourselves. And trust me, you do not want us to come retrieve him ourselves." The screen went dark. The chamber remained frozen, filled with some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all struck silent by something I had never witnessed before: true fear of humanity. In the back of my mind, one thought echoed relentlessly: Vex 9 had just made the final mistake of his very short remaining life. The next 57 minutes became the most educational of my career. I learned more about human psychology, interstellar politics, and the delicate craft of controlled intimidation than any university could ever provide. Vex 9, to his credit or folly, attempted to preserve his authority. In the security bay, surrounded by fellow officers, he stood tall and defiant. No primitive Deathworlder species will dictate terms to the Galactic Council. Let them come. What can they do that the Council has not faced before? His words carried the conviction of someone who had clearly never studied human military history. I wanted to laugh. Or weep. Possibly both. Commander Thex Prime, however, was not so blind. He opened a tactical record, streaming humanity's military campaigns across the main display. I watched his exoskeleton blanch as the data scrolled. "Officer Vex 9, he said quietly, "are you familiar with the Proxima campaign?" "Ancient history," Vex 9 dismissed. 3 months ago, Thex Prime corrected. Humans versus the Korthax Empire. The Korthax had superior numbers, superior technology, and home system advantage. The humans achieved complete victory in 17 days. The Korthax surrendered unconditionally. "Propaganda," Vex 9 snapped. "Fabricated reports. The Titan incident, exaggerated beyond reason." Thex Prime's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Exaggerated? Officer, human vessels in this system could reduce this station to slag without breaking formation." At last, Vex 9 faltered. I quietly edged closer to the emergency evacuation pods, just in case. With 40 minutes left on Morrison's countdown, something shifted. Torres received a comm signal, this time broadcast on an open channel for all to hear. "Captain Torres, this is Colonel Rebecca Hayes aboard the destroyer Vengeance. We have confirmed visual on the target. Request permission to commence psychological operations." Torres surveyed the chamber, unreadable. "Negative, Colonel. We are still within diplomatic limit. Maintain position." "Sir, the crew is motivated. They've seen the footage of the incident." "I understand, Colonel. But we follow procedure. Admiral Morrison's deadline stands." The transmission ended. But the message was unmistakable. The entire human fleet knew what had been done to Emma, and their fury was barely contained. I found my gaze drawn to the tactical display. The ship's positions were no accident. Their formation embodied a textbook demonstration of force, close enough to convey imminent threat, distant enough to remain within the veneer of diplomacy. The blade was unsheathed, but not yet swung. Meanwhile, Emma seemed blissfully unaware that her bruised cheek had brought the galaxy to the brink of what might become its shortest war. She sat in her father's lap, coloring on a datapad, occasionally glancing up at the chamber with innocent curiosity. "Daddy," she asked softly, "why does that blue person have so many arms?" "That's Officer Vex 9, sweetheart. He's the one who hurt you." Emma studied the alien with the blunt honesty only children possess. "He doesn't look very smart." The accuracy of that observation was becoming clearer by the moment. With 30 minutes left, Admiral Morrison reappeared on the comm channel. This time she was not alone. The view screen displayed her in a briefing room, flanked by senior human officers, men and women who looked as though they could arm wrestle singularities and win. "Commander Thex Prime," Morrison began, "I am transmitting a complete tactical analysis of your station's defensive capabilities. Review it. Confirm your understanding." The data that poured into the station's systems was staggering. The humans hadn't merely arrived with ships. They had spent the previous 2 days mapping every system, every weapon, every fallback measure Omega-7 possessed, and they had counters for all of it. As you can see, Morrison continued, her voice steady, your shields would hold for approximately 4 minutes under concentrated fire. Your defensive range falls short of our minimum engagement distance. Evacuation capacity? 30% of your current population, at best, in the time it would take us to disable your engines. She let the numbers settle like a blade tip against the chamber's throat. However, we are not here to conquer this station or harm civilians. We require one individual, Officer Vex 9. Surrender him, and my fleet withdraws to Earth space. Refuse, and we will come for him, and for anyone who stands in our way. Vex Prime looked as though he was weighing the odds of his own survival. Admiral, surely some middle ground exists. Perhaps Officer Vex 9 could face council justice, with human observers present. Morrison laughed, a sound sharp enough to strip paint from starships. Commander, let me explain human justice. When someone harms our children, we don't delegate responsibility. We don't entrust it to committees. We handle it ourselves. The view screen shifted. What appeared was not a cargo bay filled with supplies. It was a bay filled with humans. Hundreds of them. Marines, pilots, engineers, even cooks. All geared, all armed, all grimly eager. These, Morrison explained, are volunteers from across the fleet. Every one of them requested to participate in retrieving Officer Vex 9. I had to deny 3,000 additional applicants. Emma, looking up from her coloring pad, tilted her head. Are all those people coming to help me? Torres nodded. Yes, sweetheart. Every single one. That's a lot of helpers. Humans take care of their own, Emma. All of them. With 15 minutes left, a surprising delegation approached Vex Prime, a group of junior council officers, led by a young Zephyrian named Quill 7. Commander, Quill 7 said carefully, we've reviewed the incident reports and studied the human response protocols. We formally request that Officer Vex 9 be surrendered to human justice. Vex Prime's eye stalks swiveled in shock. You suggest we abandon one of our own? Sir, Quill 7 replied, Vex 9 abandoned council principles the moment he struck a child. The humans are offering a proportional response. If we refuse, they will escalate beyond proportion. Another officer stepped forward. Commander, we ran tactical simulations. If the humans storm this station, projected casualties could reach 60%. And that assumes they minimize collateral damage. Which they will, added a third officer grimly. Human combat records show consistent patterns of protecting non-combatants. Their violence is precise, surgical, focused. I found myself nodding. Say what you will of human aggression, but their doctrine toward civilians was ironclad. Restraint wrapped around retribution. Unfortunately for Vex 9, he had placed himself squarely in the path of that retribution. With 10 minutes remaining, Morrison returned one final time. Commander, this is your last chance to resolve this diplomatically. My Marines are armed. My ships are primed. My patience has expired. Officer Vex 9 struck a human child. That makes him a legitimate military target under Earth's rules of engagement. And then Emma stood. Before Torres could stop her, the girl walked toward the glowing view screen, determination blazing in her small face. Admiral Morrison, she said, voice steady, can I ask something? The Admiral's hardened expression softened instantly. Of course, sweetheart. What is it? If Mr. Vex 9 says he's sorry, would that help? The silence that followed was profound. An 8-year-old child, still carrying the mark of violence across her cheek, was asking if an apology could avert war. Morrison inhaled slowly before answering. Emma, that is a kind question. But some actions demand more than apologies. When adults hurt children, other adults must ensure it never happens again. Emma nodded with solemn gravity. Like when Tommy pushed me at school, and the teacher made him sit in time out. Exactly like that, Admiral Morrison said evenly. Except Officer Vex 9's timeout will be much longer. With 5 minutes remaining, Commander Thex Prime made the decision that likely saved thousands of lives. Officer Vex 9, you will surrender yourself to human custody immediately. Vex 9's mandibles clicked furiously. I will not submit to alien justice. This is Council territory. Not anymore, Thex Prime replied grimly. Security, escort Officer Vex 9 to Docking Bay 7 for transfer to human custody. The next moments dissolved into chaos. Vex 9 resisted, insisting his actions had been justified under Council regulations. His fellow officers wavered, caught between loyalty and survival. Several delegates slipped out, unwilling to remain witnesses to what might follow. And then came the most remarkable moment of all. Emma stepped forward. She walked calmly to where Vex 9 was struggling, her wide human eyes fixed on him. Mr. Vex 9, she said softly, I forgive you. The chamber froze. Even Vex 9 stopped resisting. Emma's voice was steady, far older than her years. My daddy says forgiveness doesn't mean there aren't consequences. You hurt me, and that wasn't okay. So now you have to go with the other humans and learn why it's not okay to hurt children. Her words, simple, honest, and impossibly mature, fell over the assembly like judgment. None dared interrupt. 10 minutes later, Vex 9 was escorted aboard a human shuttle. The Marines flanking him radiated restraint, though it was clear they were suppressing their own opinions about his character. Admiral Morrison's final transmission was curt, precise. Station Command, Officer Vex 9 is now in United Earth Alliance custody. He will stand trial under our military justice system. Thank you for your cooperation in resolving this diplomatically. The human fleet began its withdrawal, every vessel sliding back into hyperspace with the same perfect formation they had arrived in. The blade was sheathed, but its memory lingered. Captain Torres and Emma remained on Omega 7 for another day. I found him in the observation lounge that evening, Emma asleep in his arms, her face finally at peace. She looked like what she truly was again, a child, instead of the spark of a near war. Captain, I said carefully, what will happen to Officer Vex 9? Torres was silent for a long moment. He'll receive a fair trial. Human military justice isn't about revenge, despite what some think. Likely rehabilitation and service. That seems lenient. For the first time since the incident, Torres smiled, and it reached his eyes. Krill 448. The punishment isn't the point. The point is that every species now knows how humanity responds when their children are harmed. A demonstration? I asked. A lesson, he corrected gently. We don't want conquest. We don't want war. We want everyone to understand, human children are untouchable. Forever. He shifted Emma to a more comfortable position. She murmured in her sleep about Mr. Buttons needing a bath. You know what's beautiful? Torres added quietly. Emma will grow up knowing that when someone hurt her, thousands of humans she had never met dropped everything to protect her. That's the kind of species we are. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at my office. Inside was a child's drawing. Stick figures of humans and aliens holding hands, with a note that read, "Thank you for being nice to me and Daddy. Love, Emma." Alongside it was a formal commendation from Admiral Morrison, recognizing my objective documentation of the events. Both items hang framed in my office still. 6 months later, Officer Vex 9 was released. He had completed a rehabilitation program focusing on child psychology, human cultural values, and conflict de-escalation. He returned not as security, but as a junior administrator in the agricultural sector, condemned to file crop reports instead of wielding authority. The incident became mandatory study at the Galactic Diplomatic Academy, a case study in how cultural misunderstandings can ignite catastrophe. But more importantly, it birthed what came to be called the Emma Doctrine, An unspoken but universal law that human children under diplomatic protection were to be regarded with the same sanctity as heads of state. Because the galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, nor its strategies, but its uncompromising devotion to protecting its young. Anyone foolish enough to test that resolve would face the full might of a species forged in survival and bound by loyalty. Emma Torres grew into a diplomat, championing interspecies relations and child welfare. On her desk, she always kept Mr. Buttons, worn but intact, a reminder that even the smallest voices deserved to be heard. And somewhere in the agricultural filing department, a former security officer processed grain shipment records, contemplating the cost of violence. The galaxy was safer for children because of it. Because one little girl refused to release her teddy bear, and her people refused to release her. And so ends the story of the Emma Doctrine, born not from conquest, but from the quiet defiance of a child and the unwavering loyalty of her species. If you were moved by this tale of humanity's unyielding resolve, I invite you to subscribe, to like, share, and comment with your thoughts. Tell us what kind of sci-fi worlds and stories resonate with you most, and what you'd like to see next. Because in the vastness of the cosmos, the stories we tell are how we remind ourselves who we are and who we might yet become.